Monster Hunter Wilds has broken records, lit the gaming sphere on fire, and has undoubtedly become one of the most played games of 2025 already with relative ease. But this then begs the question as to how this came to be, and is the success of Wilds a good or bad thing for the industry as a whole? It's a complicated answer. Firstly, from Eurogamer, Monster Hunter Wilds propels Steam to highest ever player count. As of this video going live, Steam as a single platform has broken its record of most concurrent players at one time, which is now sitting at just over 40 million players in total on the platform online. This broke its previous record, which was around the 38 million mark when Helldivers 2 came out, if I'm remembering correctly. If we actually go and look at the most played games on Steam right now, number 1 is still Counter-Strike, which is, obvious, but number 2, as you can see, is Wilds. Which is incredible that the game still has the long-lasting power to hold this point when so many other games exist and they all want those player interactions. Generally speaking, Wilds has achieved in record time about 3 times the highest player count of any other Monster Hunter game on Steam alone. It beat World's highest player count by something like 900,000 players, which is insane. It seems despite the game having performance problems wise, people are still pushing through the game. I'm currently in the 3rd village area where the Everforge is myself. I just killed some giant water dinosaur guy and this other weird dino that spews oil. That one's actually really cool, and I gotta say fellas, I'm having fun. I'm having a lot of fun right now. I think what makes me happier than anything seeing Wild's success be what it is that what it is doing right now is the sort of things people really want to see more of in video games, which is the gameplay taking center stage again. I recently platinumed Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It took me 88 hours to do it, and that game was marketed for having the longest script in any video game ever. And trust me, when I was playing it, I could tell, because once I was done with it finally, I moved on to Wilds and Pirate Yakuza, but currently Wilds is speaking more to me, so Yakuza's taking a backseat for now. And going from this very script-heavy, oftentimes janky game to Wilds, where it just wants to keep moving me forward with acceleration, it's awesome, I gotta say. What I appreciate about Capcom's games for the most part is that they always feel like they want to keep moving you along, not staying in one place too often to keep the action prevalent to the overall experience. It's the same thing that they do with Resident Evil and Devil May Cry 2. I just feel like I'm constantly seeing something new when I play their games, and I love that. I have no idea what awaits me in the future with Wilds. My one buddy is farther than I am in the game, and he said that he's currently fighting like fire gorillas where he's at. Look, nothing makes sense in these games really, but it's cool, so I'm okay with it. And I love how even the subreddit for Monster Hunter is mostly just filled with positive things, like this one user who said, "I've never had so much fun playing a game. After 20 hours, I can already tell I will spend most hundreds of hours into this game. It feels so good, and most of the issues mentioned on PC are not a thing on PS5, except for multiplayer. Performance is amazing, and the hunts never felt better. 10 out of 10. Like, look, I know I usually cover the issues in video games here and there, and trust me, I will get to that in a bit here too. But generally speaking, man, it is nice to just play something where it's just fun, and I don't have to worry about stupid nonsense 99% of the time. When I was playing Kingdom Come 2, there was a lot of controversy around the game with the age of the characters, the implementation of a gay romance scene for a character that was not canonically gay themselves in the previous game, and of course, the director who was attacking fans online. It was a giant mess. And I gotta admit that all of that did hamper my enjoyment of Kingdom Come 2 because as I played it, I had these issues and the opinions of their game director in my head as I was playing it. Meaning, while I did enjoy parts of the game, the entire experience was soured knowing that the game director and more were being morons online to their fans. On the flip side with Monster Hunter Wilds, I don't have that issue. The Japanese, they rarely go out of their way to interact in a negative light with fans, rarely if ever, and I love it. It's refreshing. Because I can just play the game, knowing that the game isn't going to push an agenda on me, or the director comes out and starts calling fans names. Instead, I'm just able to play this game and enjoy it for what it is and what it should always be viewed as, which is a video game that is meant to create one single situation when I play it, which is to simply have fun. Oh my god, what a nice feeling to have in 2025 when it comes to video games, man. I'm just really enjoying my time with the game, dude. I feel like I can play with my guard down, not having to worry that someone is going to push ideology or anything else onto me. I get to just enjoy the video game for what it was always meant to be, a video game. Imagine that. And if you ask me what I want from video games in 2025 and beyond, it's Monster Hunter Wilds. Granted, I am playing on a PS5 Pro, so I am not witnessing the performance issues that are unfortunately plaguing the PC player base right now. But regardless, I am just playing this fun game that wants me to have fun and hunt monsters. And I just want to say that I am thankful for this game. I'm thankful to not have something that wants to attack me all the time, or belittle me, or do whatever else, but just offer me a fun experience for the money that I spent on it. I do wish that more games took the path of Monster Hunter in terms of its mission directive. Sadly, whenever I play a Western game, I can feel that gripping hand of the Western game developer on me, guiding my experience or pushing me to be exposed to some stupid nonsense that I really don't care for. Like when this video is out, it's March 2025. The only games that I really want to buy this month are the Suikoden remasters and the first Berserker Kazan. Because not only are they Japanese games, but they just look like good times, no alcohol required. I wish the games industry would just keep making games devoid of agenda and instead focus on what has always mattered, which is the gameplay experience. But Wilds is causing problems for the industry, just not how you intended it would be. This is from PC Gamer. Monster Hunter Wilds might be a bit too popular, as one indie dev says their sales totally flatlined around the action RPG's launch. We haven't sold a single game. The developer in question is a small indie dev called STP Works, which makes games that are online multiplayer coin-pushing games. Of course, what they make has very little overlap with that of Monster Hunter, and they're not exactly mad at Capcom. But they just found it interesting that once Wilds released that their sales tanked to basically zero following its release. This doesn't mean that STP Works hates Capcom or wants you to boycott the game. They also said in their comments that they are seeing their game still selling following the post. But they just thought it was funny how when Wilds came out it just kind of cannibalized all the sales and attention in that moment. But I think what Wilds has done is kind of almost too much of a good thing, and again, I wonder how the West will keep up with stuff like this in the future. Because as we know, video games are of course a hyper-competitive market. Many videos ago I spoke to a seasoned Chinese developer about how companies are obsessed with player retention rates and so on within their games. And they straight up told me then, and it keeps coming true, which is that companies are now just kind of fighting over the attention spans, engagement, and the players in general, since speaking, there really is only a finite amount of players to, put your games out to. Sure, there was massive growth in the industry over the past 10 years, for sure. A lot of that was bloat that came in the form of ESG, or economic, social, and governance funding that led to many Western studios being mandated to hire diversity-infused applicants to ensure that they got that funding. That, of course, led to many of the flops that you are likely aware of, many of whom released last year. One of those games was Unknown 9 Awakening, a game where you play an Indian woman killing white men almost exclusively. And big shocker, that game didn't sell well and that studio got hit with mass layoffs following its release. Bandai Namco, which helped create Unknown 9 Awakening, stated following the disastrous release, which reads, "This decision correlates directly with the failure of the studio's ambitious and courageous first project. A new IP with a rich trans media universe, the performance of the release didn't come near the company expectations after numerous timeline adjustments and investments, both financially and other, and didn't warrant any further exploration in this universe." Case in point, the Western woke franchise which vilified white men didn't sell well. Also, Sweet Baby worked on it closely, so big shocker that it failed so spectacularly here. But again, compare Unknown 9 to Monster Hunter Wilds, and I mean, it's night and day. Players obviously would rather just enjoy a game that's free of agenda, instead of having one forced down their throats and also being ordered to pay for it too. And it's still hilarious to me that despite the West's need to push diversity at any cost, that the Asian media out here is still outdoing them in that diversity department without even really trying. Like I said, I just reached the Everforge in Wilds, and there you meet these people. They're called the Oil Folk. They're a bunch of native brown-skinned people, and wow, they don't push their culture down your throat or try to belittle you or make a point to say that they're superior to you. No. They just simply exist, and it just feels natural to the world that's around you. The West could really never do this these days. Before they could, maybe sure, but now, the Oil Folk, if they were in a Western game, They would have an entire subplot where white colonizers would appear to harness the Everforge for nefarious reasons. And then a brown oil folk woman would be the hero of the story that would be tasked with killing the evil white man. By the way, I basically just explained the plot of Unknown 9 Awakening to you, minus the supernatural stuff, but like I said, it's much more fun to not only play games, but also make content even when the game in question is genuinely fun. And does it make me want to off myself in a cave somewhere due to how annoying and grueling it is to play through? What I genuinely hope comes in the future is that the games industry in general begins to embrace good games and just stops with the nonsense. Although at this point it does seem that the Western side of the equation has poisoned the well, and the only solution is to simply drain it. This is also happening, by the way, since recently, in case you didn't know, NetEase, the Chinese mega company that owns so many games and studios, it would be honestly tiring to just list them all, has basically pulled out of a lot of the Western ventures that they had going on. Why would they do this? Simple. The games being made either weren't making money or were in pre-development hell and weren't showing the promise needed to keep being funded. Although, some new startups are still being funded by NetEase like Rebel Wolves, the team making Dawnwalker, which are former CD Projekt Red devs. But other studios haven't been as lucky, like Humanoid, which couldn't make a single game despite being funded for years. I think what we're going to see in the future, and this video is in some ways a sequel to my previous video, is the continued strengthening of the Asian industry going forward, but with new things being implemented. For an example, from GameDeveloper.com, Visions of Mana co-director Kenji Ozawa opens new studio after leaving NetEase. Visions of Mana's previous studio, by the way, in case you don't know, they got shut down when that game came out. It was all due to cost-cutting issues with NetEase, but the game that they made before they closed up, it was genuinely very good, as I played it and I beat it myself. Another post that I could also find from a few months ago was from a former game dev on the game dev subreddit who claims they made plenty of games that we've all played. And they stated that there's 3 primary reasons why the game industry is heading towards what can only be called an industry reset of sorts. I won't read their whole post, but to summarize, there's 3 key factors to why so many games fail these days. While others are singing with praise and success like Wilds, these include investors of these games, the founders of the studios or publishers, and 3, the distributors who actually push the game and merchandise once it's all said and done. Basically, this game dev says that in today's market of video games, publishers don't really want new things per se. Instead, they want sequels of franchises that sell. Monster Hunter Wilds does fall into this category perfectly and proves that point with how well it's done. And the only other thing that AAA seems to be wanting to do is, for lack of a better word, cloning the other franchises that are also doing well. I'm sure that you're aware of plenty of games that have tried to copy Monster Hunter in the past. Off the top of my head, I can remember Tukiden or Tukaiden, however you say it, and of course God Eater comes to mind for me too, but there's more of course. Oh yeah, Freedom Wars, that's another one. Not to mention other games taking a similar sort of concept, but instead doing it in a more unique way like Monster Hunter. For an example, a game like that is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which is a great game by the way, and if you love Monster Hunter, I suggest looking into it because that game's awesome. But I think the reason why Monster Hunter is so popular and successful is because Capcom has found what can only be considered a unique gameplay experience that only they can offer to the quality bar that they have set for it. Sure, like I said, there have been clones in the past, however, even the clones have not been able to replicate the same level of success or quality that Wilds or Monster Hunter in general has done themselves. If there is any other game in the past 10 years that has been copied to such an extent like Monster Hunter has, my only other picks are really either the whole Battle Royale thing that PUBG kind of started, which Fortnite then copied of course, not to mention however many games have came and went that were also Battle Royales, and of course the Dark Souls, Soulsborne, Souls-like phenomenon that has completely submerged the action RPG genre for the most part. And while there has been successful Souls-likes in the past, Lies of P and Wukong they come to mind, quality-wise From Software is still unmatched. And I would consider what Capcom has done with Monster Hunter to be a similar idea here too. I think the best kinds of games are the ones that specialize in a specific style of play that they can then infinitely, reiterate and continue to refine as time passes. Souls-likes are a great comparison to the monster hunting genre of games as well. Both genres, while they are still at the end of the day action games with varying levels of RPG mechanics, they do offer unique experiences. And I think the reason why whenever From Software releases a new game, or Capcom does with Monster Hunter, The reason why they sell so well so consistently is because they know how to make their unique premises shine every time you play it. And when I think about it, outside of the Battle Royale archetype, which has swept through modern AAA Western game development like a plague, I kind of just wonder and ask myself, what unique gameplay mechanics, or I guess twists on subgenres, has the West truly brought to the table in terms of modern gaming that is wholly unique to them? I only have really two answers, I guess. First would be the Nemesis system that's in Shadow of Mordor and War. And by the way, that was a system that was so good that Warner Bros., they just copyrighted it and now they have done nothing with it for years. And I guess in a way you could also say hero shooters was something like Overwatch, but technically it started with Team Fortress 2, but you get the point. But when you compare the ingenuity of, say, the Eastern gameplay mindset to the West, it's completely different. Even in terms of, say, anime, how many actual new superheroes has Marvel or DC introduced in the past 10 years that fans have latched onto? Maybe some will say, well, there just isn't enough new ideas for superheroes, but we know that's not true, since My Hero Academia has added dozens upon dozens of unique heroes with distinct identities and power sets. I would actually even lump in Invincible as being an actual unique fresh take on superheroes from the West, which is a big win for them. But why can't the big two, Marvel or DC, or in video games in the form of, say, Activision or Microsoft, come up with any new ideas for years? Why is it that almost, not always, but almost always the unique fresh ideas are coming from the East and not, say, the West? When I think of unique gameplay mechanics or distinct franchises, my brain almost immediately goes east over west in many instances. Monster Hunter is so iconic in what it does, the subgenre of action games it imitated are literally just called Monster Hunter clones. I mean, you can't get more iconic than that. But this then circles me all the way back to the original question I asked when this video started, which is that, is Monster Hunter Wilds' success a net positive for an industry that is both struggling and heading inevitably towards an industry reset? And the answer that I have come to is that it is without a shadow of a doubt the best thing that could have happened. I think we can all agree that there are times in our lives when things are just not working for us. Maybe it's your job, your relationship, or how you go about your day. Your diet is probably bad, and you maybe refuse to change it because it would take too much effort to do, or it's too expensive, whatever it is. There's a lot of things in life that we almost force ourselves to work when we know deep down they aren't, despite our best efforts. The game industry is right now in that similar sort of position where they're trying things and many of the stuff being done are simply not working as they intended to. Whether that's forcing ideology in games or pushing racial stereotypes or trying to make every game imaginable into a live service model, like Sony PlayStation has tried this generation only to fail like 9 times out of 10, besides Helldivers being the best success in that category for them. Like I said, the industry, primarily Western, has tried to push what they believed would work for so long that they've been doing it to a point where they kind of no longer know whether what they're doing is even worth it anymore. It's like when you catch yourself at a job that you hate and then you stop for a second and realize, damn, I've really been at this job for years and what do I have to show for it? I had this realization when I was much younger and I was working at a retail store and I hated that job. The people were miserable, dude, and the atmosphere was suffocating. And instead of changing my ways, I stuck with it for another year until inevitably it wasn't my financial situation that came crashing down first, but it was actually my mental health that took the biggest hit of them all. And it took me years to fix the damage that job and the environment did to my mental health. But I didn't leave initially despite the damage the job had done to me mentally because, like all of us, I needed money. In a lot of ways, how I felt back then is probably how many game developers and the industry at large feels right now. Burnt out, neglected, tired, aimless, suffocating, and many of these devs are frankly just done with the corporatized structure of these big AAA studios. And it all comes down to a point where you can't only see that the games being made are getting progressively worse, but that the intent and feeling behind these games is nothing but a shell. It's how every Call of Duty feels now. But on the flip side, I can go look at the East, and while, yeah, there's still plenty wrong over there with how companies treat employees too, like how NetEase just cannibalizes people's souls in terms of game development, there are bright spots too. Like, did you know within Capcom when they were making Devil May Cry 5, that the developers didn't really use storyboards in a conventional way that you would know to be used to plan how the story in DMC5 would be told? In the special edition of the game, you can actually opt to change the in-game cutscenes of Devil May Cry 5 and replace them with the dev behind-scene versions of those same cutscenes, where all the characters are played by actors or devs of the game themselves looking really goofy, but when you play it side by side, You suddenly realize that the goofy storyboard videos these devs are recording are actually very faithfully recreated in-game when you play the game itself, and that's kind of awesome, isn't it? I mean, it's funny and goofy and kind of low budget, but hey, isn't it cool that they added that as a feature that you can see in the game as you replay it? That has a completely new, understanding and appreciation for what these devs are putting into the game when you play it? And that's what I'm talking about. Goofy, weird things like this would never fly in the West. It would be considered a waste of talent and resources. Yet Capcom let their devs quite literally play dress up and do amateur community theater before they went into the studio and made the game into what it is. And circling this all back to Wilds and Monster Hunter, that's kind of what I love seeing when I look into games that I enjoy. I can feel the passion and enjoyment that oozes through the screen as I play whatever game that it is that I'm playing at that moment. Sure, I can feel that corporate nonsense at times when playing Wilds. I mean, it is a game made by a big publisher. But when I fight some of the weirder monsters, I can tell that the devs, they had a lot of fun making these monsters and the gameplay in general into what it is. And really, when we think about it, isn't that what video games are supposed to be in the end for us? Games should be really fun to play, but they should also be very fun to make. It's sort of like YouTube. Sometimes when I make videos, I'm not gonna lie to you, it feels like a job at times. But other times, like this video that you're watching right now, I'm having a lot of fun making this because I get to show you goofy things. Like the Devil May Cry team wearing duct tape and wielding toy swords and throwing action figures around as fully grown adults. And I think that largely speaking, the games industry has lost this sort of fun and exploration factor for a lot of the games that are being developed these days. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't just plague the West, it happens in the East as well, but I do think it's important to ensure that we celebrate and vote with our wallets to the games that actually offer us experiences that we genuinely cannot get anywhere else of a similar quality. And while yes, Wilds has performance problems, well, on PC, over here on PS5 it's fine, I'm still having a blast playing it, and really for me, that's what video games are all about. And it feels like in a lot of ways that the gaming sphere has oftentimes forgotten that they're not here to just push an agenda, that they shouldn't just focus on making games that are just being made to make profits, but that the best games are the ones that are unique because the developers were actually given the chance to make something that they really wanted to in the first place. And when I play Devil May Cry 5, or a From Software game like Sekiro, or Eliza P, or in this case, Monster Hunter Wilds, I can feel the passion of the devs just oozing through the screen, and I gotta admit guys, it's infectious when you play games like this. Like, just the armor alone in Wilds is incredible. There's so much variety in how they can make the characters look. The expressions in those characters' faces, especially of the Palico and Wud varieties, I love seeing weird stuff in my video games. And it doesn't mean that you can't have your diversity or have some sort of political theme in your game either. You just gotta make sure that the diversity, the culture, and the politics within the game is uniquely tied to that world is all. I don't feel threatened, offended, or anything when I meet new cultures in Wilds. In fact, I welcome them. Because I know that the Monster Hunter team is at least not stupid enough to tear their whole game's world and immersion down to appease some blue-haired feminist who smells like expired Cheetos at the expense of players who actually buy and play these games. So while yes, we are to a degree heading towards an inevitable video game crash and reset, I hope that this isn't met with fear and paranoia, but instead it's viewed through the eyes of optimism and opportunity instead. Let these tired modern audience waste dies and let them crash and burn. Let it all go up in flames. And don't worry about putting them out. Let it purify and cleanse itself. And once that firestorm is over, don't be sad that what was there has been destroyed, but be happy knowing that maybe this time you can finally make something you always wanted to make. Because we need more unique gameplay experiences. We need new mechanics and gameplay loops that feel fresh, like Monster Hunting or Soulsborne's or Nemesis systems were doing during their times. And while the industry may be crashing due to the combined efforts of greedy executives and tired, burnt out devs and even things like Gamergate, what I truly hope happens is that the devs who want to really try to make what they want actually go out of their way to do just that in the future. Maybe they start up their own little indie studios, maybe the first game they make is small, but it's cool and it's weird. And maybe over time, if enough of these weird games get made where devs aren't afraid to play dress up and use action figures to convey movements and cutscenes, or they lean heavier into having weird things like the Wuds and Monster Hunter exist, the sooner this industry can return to what it's always been, which is a fun and immersive space that made games not for ideology or profit, but because gameplay is king and fun is the most important thing above all. But what do you think about all of this? Is the industry reset a good thing? And should studios and publishers seek to make their own unique gameplay experiences like Capcom has with, say, Monster Hunter or Devil May Cry? Let me know in the comments below, but thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.